We begin my top 30 remaining quarterback rankings. Remember, Thursday night players are not included. With quarterbacks that I think are probably QB3s, we have Bryce Young, Marcus Mariota, Gardner Minshew, Spencer Rattler, Mason Rudolph, and Justin Herbert. Bryce Young is facing Denver. Yikes. Don't like the matchup. Even in Dave Canal's scheme, it's pretty hard to have much positivity for Bryce Young. He's a really good person. It's just his deficiency in terms of height is really affecting his play. And so, for that reason, I do think he projects to have the lowest amount of upside out of any starting quarterback this week. Marcus Mariota is playing against Chicago this week. He's coming off what was a very good game. I do project him to start and not Jaden Daniels. At least at the point of me recording this video, Daniels has not practiced yet. And so I do think he gets the start. And while he once again was great last week, it's the Bears. That defense is nasty. I want nothing to do with anyone in this offense with the exception of Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson. And so I do think he's an avoid this week, even though he does have rushing upside. Then we have Gardner Minshew against the Chiefs. Last week he lost you points, and so it was better to just not start anybody. I don't think that happens again, but really Brock Bowers is all he has. Jacoby Myers, if he plays this week, he just does not have that much upside in my opinion. Then we have Spencer Rattler against the Chargers. I hate the matchup for him. He came right back down to earth this past week, although to be fair to him, his receiving core was non-existent. And so even though I do project him to have some of the assets in the passing game back, in what's an awful matchup, I would absolutely avoid him against the Chargers. Then we have Mason Rudolph playing against the Lions. It's the Titans. I wouldn't start him if you don't have to. He doesn't provide any rushing upside. And it's just an atrocious offense overall. So I do think he's an avoid. Then we have Justin Herbert. He's just not getting the touchdowns and in general not getting enough volume to really have good games. And so for that reason, despite him being one of the more talented quarterbacks in real life, for fantasy, I think he's a must avoid. And so if you don't have any better options, fine, but I would try to start anybody that's not shown on this list here over him. All right, so this is the tier I call they have rushing upside, but it's an atrocious matchup, and so I don't really trust them tier. In other words, low-end quarterback twos. We have Daniel Jones and Drake May. Daniel Jones does have upside. It's just this is a terrible matchup against TJ Watt. I think he is going to tear up that offensive line. He was sacked, what was it? Was it 8 times last week against the Eagles? I think he's sacked time and time again in this one. And so I do think that he is an absolute avoid. Then we have Drake May playing against the Jets. He's looked awesome. I do think the pass rush, they're potentially getting Hassan Reddick back. And so I'm assuming he plays this week. And so for that reason, I think that makes their pass rush even more nasty. And I think they're going to be pretty angry coming off that loss to the Steelers. And so for that reason, I would probably avoid Drake May just due to the matchup, but he does have rushing upside. Now we have quarterbacks that I think are very risky to start, but do have theoretical upside. We have Jameis Winston and Patrick Mahomes. Winston isn't scared of anything. You can tell by the look in his eyes. And that is a positive and a negative for him. I do think that he has a good amount of production. I think he mostly works with Njoku in this one. I also, however, think that he throws multiple picks, and so I think it's going to be a mixed bag from him. And so I do think there are stronger starts, even in what is a plus matchup. Mahomes is playing against the Vegas Raiders. I do think he throws a touchdown to Kelsey in this one, but I still don't think he has a massive game overall. It's bizarre. He's gone from being a top shelf fantasy quarterback to being somebody that doesn't have any upside. And so until that changes, it's really hard to project him as much more than a QB2. And so we move on to quarterbacks that I think are probably mid to high-end QB2s this week. We have Russell Wilson, Anthony Richardson, Trevor Lawrence, Geno Smith, A-Rod, and Dak Prescott. Russell Wilson was awesome last week. I do want to see that for more than 1 week. Against the Giants, I don't think they're going to need to pass the ball quite as much. I think they're going to run, 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 run. And so I do like Najee Harris a lot in this game. And I could be wrong about Russell, but I do want to see more than one game before vaulting him too much further up these rankings. Anthony Richardson is playing against Houston. Despite throwing for less than a 50% completion percentage in week one against them, he had a massive week. And so I do think in what is a plus matchup, he does have a ton. He has QB1 overall upside. It's just looking less and less likely that he reaches it every given week with how poor he's been as a passer. And so for that reason, if you're really desperate at quarterback, he does have a ton of upside, and it's an awesome matchup. Uh, it's just that the floor is basically 5 points. So be wary. T-Law is playing Green Bay. I do think this is a bit of a trap game for him. He's been pretty decent the past couple weeks, actually. But we saw what Green Bay just did to CJ Stroud. And so I do think with them playing a lot better on defense recently, that T-Law isn't a void this week, but I still think that he's a better starting option than some of the players ranked below him. Geno Smith is playing against the Buffalo Bills. I don't think this is a good matchup for him either. I do think he's going to be missing DK Metcalf. And so because he's been kind of a mid quarterback from a fantasy standpoint the past 2 weeks, I do think there are quite a few better starts this week. But I also think he has a relatively safe floor because he should have to pass quite a bit in this one. And so we have Aaron Rodgers against the New England Patriots. I think that the offense as a whole is going to improve steadily. And I do think we see more success this week than we did this past week. But I do want to see this offense really, really click through the air before projecting a ton of improvement from him. Dak Prescott is playing against the 49ers in this one. It's a plus matchup. I do think that he gets Jake Ferguson and CeeDee Lamb involved quite a bit. But I don't think he has one of those massive boom weeks because he is on a cold streak. But I do think that they're going to need to pass a lot in this one to keep up with the 49ers. And so I do think that he's a pretty solid play just due to passing volume alone. If you like what you're hearing and seeing so far, feel free to like and subscribe. It's a free and easy way to support the channel, and I'd really appreciate it. Thanks. Quarterbacks that I think are probably high-end QB2s to low-end QB1s this week are Brock Purdy, Kyler Murray, Tua, Bo Nix, and Joe Burrow. Brock Purdy is playing against Dallas. While it is a plus matchup, I do think that he's really going to be hurt by the loss of Brandon Ayuk. Although I do think that George Kittle and Deebo Samuel definitely stand to gain a lot from that. Then we have Kyler Murray playing against Miami. I don't think he has the best day overall. I think he does throw a touchdown to McBride, and I do think he salvages his day on the ground. I do think, though, that MHJ is locked up by Jalen Ramsey. They've been isolating MHJ a lot, and so I think that works against them in this one. Then we have Tua. I do think he returns. It's an awesome matchup against Arizona. Due to the lack of rushing upside, though, I think he's just a solid fringe low-end QB1, high-end QB2 this week, but he definitely does have a ton of upside due to it being a very easy matchup. Then we have Bo Nix. It's the best matchup, really, that you can draw against Carolina. Their defense has been historically bad this year, and Bo Nix has been pretty solid with some real upside from week to week, and so I think he's a very strong start in this one. Joe Burrow is playing against the Philadelphia Eagles. He has kind of cooled off since his 5-touchdown game against the Ravens, but I do think he bounces back a little bit in this one because I do think against the Eagles, they are going to have to pass the ball quite a bit to stay in this game. Quarterbacks that I think are strong QB1s, but I wouldn't project to be in the tier of the top 3 that I have separated, are Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins, CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, and Caleb Williams. Jared Goff, I don't think has one of those massive ceiling games, but the offense is so efficient each and every single week, and he has been historically good the past 4 weeks that I think he has one of the best floors in the game. I just don't think that due to the lack of rushing upside that he has a ceiling game here, but a pretty solid one. We have Baker Mayfield playing against the Falcons. I think that without Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, his ceiling is definitely lowered, but I think the passing game is going to run a lot through Cade Otton as well as the running backs. I think McMillan sees a solid target share too. So yeah, I don't think he has one of the best ceilings anymore, but I think that he's going to throw the ball quite a bit to stay in this game. With Kirk Cousins, he threw for over 500 yards the last time these two teams played. I definitely don't project that again, but I think he's a very, very strong start with an incredibly high floor. CJ Stroud is playing against the Colts. I think this is a get-right game after his rough outing with the Packers. I think we see the Rookie of the Year QB Stroud in this one, and I think he's a very high upside play. Then we have Jordan Love against Jacksonville. This is, besides the Panthers, it's probably the best matchup you can draw. And so I think he's a very high upside play in this one and a must start unless you have one of the quarterbacks that I happen to have ranked higher than him. Then we have Caleb Williams against Washington. While I wouldn't trust Caleb Williams against good competition yet, against poor competition, I think he's a very strong start. They're coming off a bye, so they've had extra time to prepare. And so I think he absolutely tears up the Washington Commanders this week and is one of the best starts in fantasy. And so finally, we have my top three. I think these guys have the highest floor and highest ceiling of any quarterbacks this week and are serious candidates to be the QB1. We have Lamar Jackson, Hurts, and Josh Allen. Lamar is coming off a 5-touchdown game. I don't think he does that again, but I think he's incredible in this one, and especially on the ground. Jalen Hurts is playing against the Cincinnati Bengals. I think that A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are awesome this week in fantasy, and I think that's a product of Jalen Hurts. I think he also scores a rushing touchdown in this one, and so I think he is one of the strongest plays. And finally, we have Josh Allen against Seattle. I think in this one, he has the opportunity to go berserk. I think he has a fantastic day on the ground. I do project him for a rushing touchdown, and I do think that he is the strongest start in fantasy. And so to conclude, remember once again, Thursday night players are not included in these rankings. We start off with quarterbacks that I would definitely avoid. I think they're QB3s. We have Bryce Young, Mariota, Minshew, Rattler, Rudolph, and Herbert. Quarterbacks that I think have solid rushing upside, but are in such atrocious matchups that I really wouldn't feel confident with them are Daniel Jones and Drake May. And then quarterbacks that I think do present you with a lot of theoretical upside, but I would be very cautious this week playing, are Winston and Mahomes. Then quarterbacks that I think are probably mid to low end QB2s this week are Russell Wilson, A-Rich, T-Law, Geno Smith, A-Rod, and Prescott. Quarterbacks that I think are probably high end QB2s to potentially low end QB1s are Brock Purdy, Kyler Murray, Tua Tagovailoa, Bo Nix, and Joe Burrow. Quarterbacks that I think are solid QB1s, but I don't think are candidates to be the QB1 overall, are Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins, CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, and Caleb Williams. And then quarterbacks that I think are serious candidates to be the QB1 overall and have the best floors of anybody are Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Josh Allen. All right, so who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? Let me know below in the comment section and let me know why. With that being said, if you like what you've seen and heard in this video, feel free to like and subscribe. It's a free and easy way to support the channel, and I'd really appreciate it. Thanks.